I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Thursday, July the 30th, 2015. Israeli authorities evacuated about 20 families last night from the site of the former Jewish settlement of Sanur in the West Bank. Sanur was evacuated 10 years ago during the Gaza disengagement, and some of the families who lived there at the time returned several days ago, barricading themselves inside ruins of the settlement to mark the anniversary, doing so without permission from Israeli security forces. And yesterday, illegal structures in the West Bank Jewish settlement of Beit El were demolished amid clashes between Israeli authorities and Jewish settlers. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he was against the demolition, but that it had to be respected as it was at the order of Israel's Supreme Court. Netanyahu also announced that new housing units would be built in the settlement. The United States expressed its disapproval. The State Department issued a statement saying they were deeply concerned about the newly announced construction, both in Beit El as well as in East Jerusalem, and urged the Israeli government to, quote, refrain from unhelpful actions that they said undercut the possibility of a two-state solution. Israel sharply criticized a report released yesterday by Amnesty International that accuses Israel of, quote, disproportionate or otherwise indiscriminate attacks in the aftermath of the kidnapping and killing of an IDF officer during Operation Protective Edge last summer. The Jerusalem Post reports that Director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Amnesty, Philip Luther, said there was evidence that Israeli forces had committed war crimes in their efforts to foil the capture of IDF Lieutenant Hadar Goldin in Rafah, accusing Israel of relentless bombing in the area immediately following the incident. Israel's foreign ministry rejected the report, which it said was fundamentally flawed in its methodologies. In a statement, the ministry said Amnesty created its own narrative of events and ignored the massive evidence of Hamas's continued attacks on Israeli civilians with rocket fire and through terror tunnels. The statement read, once again, Amnesty has shown its compulsive obsessiveness toward Israel by rehashing already existing claims and complaints into a smoke and mirrors website. The Jerusalem Post reports that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met earlier this week with Arab leaders to address gaps that exist for the Arab sector in Israeli society, in areas like employment, education, transportation, and housing. Mayor of the Arab village of Sakhnin, Mazen Ghanaim, told the Post that the meeting was positive without a doubt, and that a ministerial committee would meet each month to deal with problems in the Arab sector. Netanyahu was cited as telling the meeting that the state of Israel has many economic achievements and all citizens need to be part of it, adding, "I am committed to equal opportunity for all." Israeli police arrested 7 Palestinians suspected of several recent assaults on Israelis along the popular Sherover promenade in the mixed Jewish-Arab neighborhood of Abu Tor, which overlooks the Old City of Jerusalem. Jerusalem District Police Head Assistant Chief Moshe Edrei said the arrests were the result of an intensive undercover investigation after a pattern of violence was recognized at the promenade in Jerusalem. 3 minors and 4 adults were arrested. An exhibit dedicated to the strong relationship between Pope John Paul II and the Jewish people opened at the Vatican yesterday. A blessing to one another, Pope John Paul II and the Jewish people, has been displayed in the past across the U.S. It will run through September the 17th in Vatican City. According to the Vatican, the exhibit describes the pontiff's efforts to improve the relationship between the Catholic Church and the Jewish people, and reflects the continuing relevance of the Nostra Aetate Declaration, which was issued 50 years ago, and stresses the religious bond shared by Jews and Catholics, and calls for dialogue and understanding. Social justice advocate David Luchins will receive the Albert D. Chernin Award from the Jewish Council for Public Affairs at its annual meeting later this year. The Touro College professor and community activist who represents the Orthodox Union on the JCPA Executive Committee will be honored at the JCPA's 2015 Jewish Community Town Hall, which runs October the 10th through the 13th in Washington. The award recognizes Jewish leaders for promoting the, quote, social justice imperatives of Judaism, Jewish history, and the protection of the Bill of Rights. JCPA Senior Vice President and Acting CEO Ethan Felsen called Luchin's, quote, an embodiment to the values of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. And looking now at our programming for tonight, Thursday, July the 30th, coming up at 7 on Jewish 101, learn how the Jewish tradition views the issue of abortion. At 7:40, founding president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, addresses the 2015 Jerusalem Post Conference in New York City. At 8 o'clock, a panel discussion on training tomorrow's rabbis from New York's Temple Emanuel Skirball Center in partnership with the Jewish Week. At 9 o'clock, Rabbi Uri Regev, president and CEO of Chidush, which promotes freedom of observance and equality in Israel, talks to Mark Golub about the problems of marital laws in the country. And at 10 o'clock, former Israeli ambassador to the UN Dori Gold and several experts analyze the anti-Israel bias in media reports and legal implications for Israel regarding last summer's war in Gaza. And coming up right after this newscast tonight, highlights from the Maccabi games in Berlin. And that's the JBS News Update for Thursday, July the 30th, 2015. I'm Teisha Bader.